from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Barrett. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me from Boston, Jeffrey. Jeff, thank you very much for being on the show. The way I like to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So can you please tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jeff Frick. I'm, as you said, located in Boston, Massachusetts. I am I'm a serial entrepreneur. I typically have the role of chief technology officer. And I've had varying degrees of experience. I started my work life really, as a network engineer for a credit card processing company. I started that very, very young, right before I got into college even. And then, transitioned into actually working as a consultant. We built a commission system for an investment bank, which was kind of interesting and fun, for an investment bank called Fleet Bank. This was way back in the late 90s. I'm aging myself a little bit with that, but so did that, and then eventually got on to, graduated from college and started with a company called intranets.com that did group collaboration software. So it's kind of like a Slack or a Google application. Way back prior to any of that being there, we were probably ahead of our time, but we were at the height of the dot-com boom, a advertising supported application that eventually had to go and get people to pay for it. And that was we went from 4 million registered users down to, just a couple 100,000, but, having just a couple 100,000 people paying me money was a good deal. And we got bought by WebEx Communication. So I worked for WebEx for a while. My boss there actually, is now the CEO and co-founder of Zoom. So I worked with him, Eric Yuan, for a while. And that was fun and interesting. We did get acquired by Cisco along the way, which is a huge company, right? And all of a sudden I'm a startup guy at a large company. So that was very challenging and an interesting time. Ended up starting a startup after that was really focused around filtering and aggregating social media data. Social media, this is 2008, was kind of in its infancy. But people were really kind of struggling with the amount of data that they were getting from all of their different social media networks. So we built something that aggregated all the data together and then had some machine learning to figure out what you would actually be interested in. And so kind of like what they do today on social media, where they're just showing you kind of the things that are relevant to you. We failed miserably at that startup. I'm not shy to say that. The technology was great, but the execution of getting investors and getting clients, we never really got there. So we self-funded that, and after a couple of years, we kind of wrapped up the show. Which brings me to my most interesting kind of experience, which is when we were finishing up that project, and that I often call it the epic failure that was was that startup. Um, we were leveraging, I had a connection way back, all the way back uh, 15 years earlier with a gentleman from Katmandu, Nepal. Um,
Mhm.
it started an outsourcing company in Katmandu. And so we had leveraged 4 people there to help us build our epic failure of an application. That was great technically, but so at the end of that, he came to me and said, "Hey, your startup failing. Why don't you come to me and become our chief technology officer?" And so this was a bootstrapped company. I was one of the co-founders coming into that company. And initially we were really just continuing to do outsourced development. We did outsourced development mainly in the healthcare space because he had done a lot
Mhm.
of US healthcare work in the past. So we built care management systems. We built analytics for individual clients. We worked with a lot of data. And basically over that period of time, we were bringing on clients, building up our revenue, and actually getting to the point where we could then fund our own applications to be built. So, about a year and a half in, we started development on a analytics platform for the healthcare industry. We were focused on employers in the U.S. space who were basically paying the medical claims out of their own pocket, self-insured employers. And, a large self-insured employer for Fortune 100 company could be spending $4 billion a year in healthcare. And so not surprisingly, they want to know uh, where that money's going and that they're getting good quality for their data.
Yeah.
So we would collect that data and we built out a really, really interesting cloud-based platform within Amazon AWS. So my partner and I, Rob, we had started with Amazon AWS back in 2007. So very early on, very early adopters with them. But by the time we got around to this startup in 2011, 2012, we built out a Apache Hadoop distributed processing system within Amazon. We leveraged a technology called Elasticsearch.
Mhm.
And through our development team in Nepal, we iteratively built up this pretty significant platform that took in lots of data from lots of endpoints within the healthcare system and then delivered it to our clients. We had a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. Um, very early on, we'd made some technology decisions. We'd used a technology called Apache HBase, and we found ourselves developing technology just to make the queries work as opposed to the actual application. So we pulled that out of the tech stack and brought in Elasticsearch, which is a document-based search engine that allowed us to do analytics on the fly, and basically do filtering and aggregation on the fly, using their inverted indexes. And, that document-based search engine served us really well over the years. It was all based on a REST. We built a REST API on top of that platform. We built a whole bunch of automation around taking data in. At our peak, we were taking in 35,000 files a month from about 800 different entities or companies within the healthcare system. So we built that up. Again, we were 100% self-funded, bootstrap. Never took professional money, so we just continually used our services company to fund the development. Eventually, we did away with the services and moved strictly to just an application development system. But we were very scrappy. Uh, you know, did not pay for a lot of things, built a lot of things, certainly had leverage because we had a strong workforce in Kathmandu. Um, at the height before I left, we had almost 700 employees in Kathmandu doing the work. So we continued to grow through 2017, 2018. We actually looked at selling at one point in 2018, decided it wasn't the right time, and eventually decided in 2020 to sell the company for a really, really great exit to a company called Cedargate Technologies. And Cedargate was a larger healthcare company, and they were really focused. They are really focused on a concept called value-based care, which in the U.S. is transitioning our healthcare system from just like you pay for the bandages, you pay for the shot, you pay for the doctor, to just paying for healthcare overall on a monthly basis. And so we adapted the platform to do those analytics in addition to the other analytics. Took us about 2 years to do, but we then opened up huge markets. I don't know if I went way too deep for you, but that's a little bit of,
No, I was enjoying it, Jeff. No, amazing. And actually, explaining it this way, a lot of questions came to my mind.
Yeah.
And because you mentioned the ups and downs actually of having a startup, right? So from being and this is part of being a serial entrepreneur, I think, like because you start many businesses, sometimes you have this smooth start, everything is on your side, and sometimes you have things not on your side, I would say.
Well,
So
I think even when it looks like it's smooth and easy,
yeah,
there's always something, always some bumps along the road for sure. Some have way bigger bumps than others, that is for sure.
yeah. But what do you think, is I would say, something which is underrated that people doesn't put too much attention when they are starting something, but actually it's a skill or attribute that help to succeed.
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly flexibility. I mean, what isn't known, I don't know. I mean, certainly flexibility is a very important attribute. Almost always you start in one direction and you end up, kind of going back and forth and really, for me, I'm a guy who really enjoys building products that people use and find useful. And so that journey for me is very, very important. And along that way, you kind of deviate and change paths. And a lot of times that's driven by conversations you have and listening to to the market, listening to potential clients, users. When I've spent quite a bit of time talking with other startups and entrepreneurs, and often I end up with a question to them like, "Who is your customer, and do you have one yet?" Because in my model and how I end up building products and how I've done that for years, I always start with you can't build a product. My epic failure back really existed because we built something in a vacuum without having a customer or someone who had a real pain point that needed to be solved. So we ended up building something that was great that no one really wanted at the time, right? So I always, when I'm talking with other entrepreneurs, the question is, do you have someone that you can identify that can really end up being your partner in building this? Because they're the person who's going to end up, paying you for the application, for the use, and you can work together and have them help you inform and maybe have fewer of those kind of deviations. But um, oftentimes, and you see this all over the place, people end up, I've got this great idea, I'm going to help people figure out about allergies in restaurants or something like that. And it's like, well, who's going to pay for that? And the question comes back to that, and that they're not really clear what the market is. So I think, that's a roundabout way of saying, listening is probably a very, very key ingredient in startups, and listening to the folks, identifying clients and then listening to them, and having them really be partners in the development, I think is a big key.
Yeah. So to this point, like how you can make them partner in development. I know, like maybe here you mean getting feedbacks, trying to check the quality of the product, right? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, so as an example, when we built our healthcare analytics software package, when we first started selling that product, we didn't have a product. We had an HTML mock-up of what we thought the product was going to be. And we were selling while we were starting development. And we went out to our network. We knew folks who might have interest in that product. We'd identified potential clients. And we said, hey, come on board, help us out. You can help influence the application development. Here's what we're going to be building. Being very upfront about the fact that, we don't have it yet. This is what we're building. And we got 3 or 4 very early clients to come on. They didn't pay us much. I think it's key that they do pay you something, because everyone needs a little bit of skin in that game, or that then you're the least of their concerns. But so from our perspective, we just showcased an idea, and with a mock-up, and instead of going after investors, which is kind of what most folks end up doing when they start a company, we went after clients with basically the same approach of here's our mock-up, here's our POC, and continually just upgrading what we were showing them, but really in a focused approach to looking for clients as opposed to investors. And it's just in my mind, it's different than how a lot of the entrepreneurs today approach, or at least the ones that get a lot of press approach, building products.
So you think, and this is a debate that I always like to hear different opinion on it. So
Yeah.
between the school of bootstrapping the business, building it slowly yet healthy way, versus get some PR news, getting some Series A, seed, pre-seed, whatever you want to call this. Um, I want to hear your opinion on that, Jeff, because you've been doing this for the
Yeah.
past 30
And
years, right?
I've done it both ways, right? I've been involved, and I've been part of startups where we had, Series A money come in. Money was not really a problem, right? Um, for me, and then we had, literally, no one investing anything, and, very limited, a couple of friends and family chipping in a little bit of money. Um, and I think it's the two approaches are good in different scenarios, right? Um, for me, I don't enjoy the venture backed experience because I like to have control. I think that building quality products takes some patience. And I don't think that professional investors necessarily, they're not afforded the ability to give you necessarily the time to build that. I do think there's a time and place for it. You get to a certain level where you just need to scale, and you need more capital than you can get away with. But every time I've gotten into a venture backed startup or company, you end up spending an awful lot of time communicating with your investors. You build board decks. You have to get permission for things, and it's, for me, the guy who likes to build product, it's a very frustrating experience. I think with the right partner, maybe it's possible, but for me, slow and steady wins the race. And, I, I really prefer that, but I certainly have lots of friends and I know a lot of great investors who've done some really amazing things. Just it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, completely understood. And yeah, majority of the time when I speak to founders who prefer the bootstrap method, it's exactly for the same reason because they say, I don't want to give my neck to someone who doesn't understand necessarily what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
So on the other side, as you said, it depends sometimes also on the stage you are in or on the kind of disruption that you are doing currently. Maybe you need this money because you are in kind of a deep tech technology or something similar,
Or you
which
need
make
large marketing or yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
which makes sense.
yeah.
Now, you mentioned something which is interesting also, and this is, uh, it can be, let me divide it into questions so to be better. So first, you know, um, about having large uh, people to build the product with you. This is one thing. Plus, they are in Nepal, in Kathmandu.
Yep.
So, how challenging is this? When you start to scale and you scale it remotely, like how hard it is, and how you can overcome this at the same
Yeah, I
time.
mean, so we started with about 10 people in Kathmandu. We ended up with just shy of 700. And we ended up having to build. So, much like a lot of, certainly in India and other countries, turnover is maybe a little higher than you get in some of the other countries. I think the brain drain, if you will, is real, where people want to go abroad for further studies. They want to move to more developed countries and regions, and so you're constantly working through that already. So we ended up setting up a very sophisticated, and I had a great partner in Nepal, Pramod Rai, who helped put this system together. But we had relationships with 6 different universities. We had what we call the trainee program, where new engineers could come in for 6 months. They wouldn't get paid a lot, but they'd learn, and we would teach them the ways of how we do development, how we do iterative releases, how we iteratively build products, and we would train them up. And then if they were good at the end, then they got to be a full-time employee. And so we built this system, and over time, really to handle both getting bigger, but also staying ahead of, 10-15% turnover. That system worked out really well when, we sold the company and we had 237 employees, and the new company came in and said, "Hey, we want to take this model because it's very cost effective, and we want to move all of our development out of India and into Nepal because the economics made sense." And we ended up adding 350 engineers in a 12-month period, which is, when you only have 237, is a big task. So we were doing a lot of hiring, but all of the mechanisms that we put in place, the training programs, all of that really set us up for success in scaling quickly because we laid the foundation early. The other part of that is, from a CTO perspective, beyond the training. One of the things that I learned very early when building that application, when you have turnover, when you've got new, we primarily leveraged younger folks coming in. We wanted to build and architect the system not just for the customer and their customer experience, but for reducing the amount of time it takes a new engineer to come on and be effective within the platform. So we simplified our code, we simplified our architecture, we made things more modular so that you could live within that one area, and that really enabled us to continue to grow quickly. Um, and so for me, keeping it simple, keep it simple, stupid is the whole, engineering mantra at some level. And, we did that not just from the user interface and the application, but from the back end product, um, development and architecture. And those two things really helped us grow quickly.
Yeah, yeah, that's the, it's a good insight. And I think I had also another CTO on the show in another country, and the same thing came up. It's about putting the processes, I think, and
Yep.
having this a systematic way.
Have a
Now,
documented process. And yes, yes, all of that is very key.
when sometimes when I hear these terms, Jeff, like it's music to my ear because I'm from technical background. So you were mentioning about trying to use uh, this AWS, trying to use that, and trying to scale it up and so on. And you mentioned Elasticsearch and so on. So from a CTO perspective, right? Like um when you make the choice between trying to optimize something versus you say, you know what, this will not work. Let's build something from scratch. So what is the key moment that will push to take such decision?
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard call, right? And so much of even taking a third party library and pulling it in, and whether that's a paid solution or, I'm a big just open source guy generally. So I'm always, but anytime you go and you adopt an open source project or a commercial product, in some ways you're betting on that solution, because one of two things is generally going to happen with that solution. It's going to take off and become big and be continued to be refined and adopted and built out, or it's going to stagnate and you're going to be stuck with what you've got. So that's, for me, that's a huge, and I would say by luck more than anything, and maybe a little bit of research, we've been very successful with picking projects that continue to get built out. That being said, we have run into, areas where we just clearly had a square peg in a round hole. The scaling was an issue, right? And so for me, I decided to make the change when we were spending more time trying to solve for this technology than we were actually building features and functions. And the day that happened, I started going out and looking for replacement. We were using HBase, which is a very good distributed columnar data store, but it did not do what we needed to do, which is have inverted indexes, allow for text searching and all of that. And we were ending up building, like, it was a big day when we could sort data um, i- by one column. And that's basic dial tone functionality, but in HBase that didn't exist. So we had to go build functionality. And I'm like, if we're really excited that we can sort data and we're an analytics company, we're in big trouble. Because that should have been there long ago. So that was the day where I'm like, okay, I need to go and find something else. Now, luckily, we built the system and the platform, so we abstracted that data store. So we were able to pretty quickly just remove HBase, and we brought in Elasticsearch. Again, though, I got lucky with Elasticsearch. This was 2000, 2011, 2012 when we made the switch. Elasticsearch was not a big name technology like it is today. And we got really lucky on that. And it worked out really well. But that switch was a big deal. We put product development on hold for 3 or 4 months making the switch. But just for me, if you're spending more time trying to just deal with the technology than you are building the product, that's kind of my tipping.
Uh, I have to agree with you. And from your pure consultancy perspective, so, the way I like to approach it is if you're doing something repetitively and, you're not reaching the result that you aim to, that means you need to change, the process itself, right? So,
Yeah.
you try to optimize it, you try to streamline it as much as possible. You get like results, but it's not like 5%,
Yeah.
6%. It's not like this wow effect. So yeah, 100% on that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you mentioned that you are dealing with, at some stage with the healthcare data, right?
Yep.
So it's the most sensitive data ever, right?
Yep.
So how do you approach this from a CTO perspective when you have to deal with something which is sensitive data?
I mean, security has to be the first and foremost thing, uh, in our mind. And we were in a very sensitive situation because we had healthcare data. It was identified. So we knew the person who was having the procedure done. We knew their diagnosis. We knew everything about that individual. And we had millions and millions of Americans' healthcare data in our warehouse, in our Elasticsearch clusters. And so we took a very layered approach to security, and really started with encryption being everywhere. If it's on a disk, it's encrypted. If it's in flight, it's encrypted. We also wanted our code to be secure. So we actually built out a training program for secure coding. We took bits and pieces from others, but you know, having someone else's training for secure coding is never really a great solution because you end up with things that really don't matter, and you also end up with things that, wow, that really matters and it's specific to our area. So we built a very comprehensive secure coding program. So everyone coming in had to go through that. We had uh, security tests that we ran before each release, to validate that, certain users could only see the data that they should be able to see. There's a checklist we ran through, smoke test every single release. We ran through that. Um, Obviously, the infrastructure security was paramount as well. So we segmented all of our networks so that the front end web servers were in their own network. If they ever became compromised, you really couldn't get um, to the middle layer. And if you could get to the middle layer, then you had to get to the back end layer. And so, a logical security network layout really helped us with that as well. So we minimized our risk. We were also taking raw data in 35,000 files a month. So in that regard, we took those through SFTP, which is secure, but could easily get compromised as well, right? So we whitelisted IP addresses, did not have it open to the world. We also implemented automation so that if a file hit our SFTP server, it was only in that folder for about 15 minutes, and then it's out into a more secure area. So all of that segmentation really helped as well. We were SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, so we had continuous audit of all of our policies and procedures and processes going on all the time, with a SIM and a third party helping us with that. And we were high trust certified as well. So not only were we following our policies and procedures, but they met the high trust standard. Um, None of that happened overnight though, right? We started with, we're going to encrypt the data and we're going to write secure code, and then built that up over time. You talk about healthcare data. We had a lot of concerns from clients and data vendors, data suppliers, about giving us that data with a 600-person offshore development team in Katmandu. And so I spent a lot of my time working through with clients and vendors why that was okay. And, we had our engineers not having access to any of the data. They were developing the system in a vacuum where they didn't have access to live data. And then we did have operational folks who did have access, but they were a small number of people who had access. The data always resided within the United States, within one of the servers there. Um, and we operated a wholly owned subsidiary. So our 600 plus employees over there were employees of the company. They of this wholly owned subsidiary. We're not going to third parties to bring in resources, and so we could go through all the background checks. We put everyone through U.S. federal background checks as well as the Nepal background checks. And we had very strict controls around employees and who we were bringing on board.
Yeah. So, these things for the folks who are not familiar. And by the way, it's not for the United States, but it's
It, same everywhere, right? Yeah.
yeah, but it's like, because I think United States, especially when it comes to healthcare, it was one of the first countries to regulate this with something called HIPAA,
Yeah.
which is the Healthcare Protection Act, for a short. So this is important because you don't want this data to fall into the hands of the bad people because they can use it. So,
Yep.
like, hats off, Jeff, for all what you try to do to secure and keep this data, uh, you know, the most resilient way, I would say.
Yeah.
Now,
Thank you.
we talked about a lot of things. So what are you seeing, from a CTO perspective? Everyone talks about AI. I'm aware of that, but I mean, other than AI, or
Yes.
maybe something blended with AI, what are you seeing major trends happening now as a CTO?
I mean, certainly AI. But I mean, and I think so. Artificial intelligence, machine learning is such a broad term, right? It's like saying I'm in the transportation industry, and it's like, yes, but do you do boats or do you do airplanes? And for me, I think one of the real trends that's out there, and one of the problems I think that really needs to be solved is making some of this technology approachable for specific use cases, and also making that application um, not have kind of the false positives that can come out with, machine learning. AI is all about confidence levels. So if I have 70% confidence that this is a proper output, should we be doing anything with that or not? And I think not AI and ML being very interesting, but well, it's certainly interesting, but the application of it and integrating it into real world use cases. I spent years um, with the healthcare data, and we did machine learning work, and and at the end of the day, we had this saying that machine learning isn't what's for dinner; it's an ingredient, right? And too much of the world right now is focused on it being the meal, and it's not. It's just another tool in our tool bag. I think dealing with large data sets has largely been solved. Um, but doing that in allowing for end users to manipulate that data at, at a large scale is still something that is kind of not really a solved science. There's a lot of folks talking about doing it. But you end up oftentimes, if you've got, you know, billions and billions, trillions, petabytes of data, and you want to change how that data is represented, you you don't have great solutions still today. And I think that's another area. And there's everyone talks about machine learning and AI being a solution for that. I haven't seen that yet. I see interesting things being done, but it's always on a small scale. And the output is always, if you contrive the data the right way coming in, it looks magical. If you don't, you end up with something that's not quite so magical.
Yeah, makes sense. Uh, Jeff, like, from all the experience that you have, if someone is listening to us or watching us today and they want to embark on a entrepreneurship journey, from all these years of experience, what do you advise? Maybe someone who's about to graduate from school, someone who wants to leave the 9 to 5. What do
Yeah.
you tell them?
For me, the first thing to do is start talking to your network, the people that you know. You've got an idea, maybe you don't have an idea. Start talking to people, talk about and listening, right? At the end of the day, it's way more about listening than actually what you're saying. Get people talking about what they do and how they do it, what the problems are within that. Find some pain points and go solve small pain points. Start small. Don't look for, this mega solution. It's okay if there's just one thing that's problematic for someone, solve that problem to start and find some folks who would be interested in paying you for solving that problem for them. And, and start doing that, right? A lot of people sit back and say, "Oh, I want to go do this." And they just sit there and hem and haw about it, spend months and months and months, even years researching their idea. Get just one person who's interested in solving that problem, who has it, work with them, build it, and just iterate on that. You cannot get to the moon in one shot. You got to build all the component parts. And if you do that over a longer period of time, 5 to 10 years, you'll be amazed at what you have at the end of that process. But the last thing you want to do is go back into a corner and spend a year and a half building something without having people look at it, bring it into the market, and have people use it. Because you're going to end up being, no matter how good you are, you're going to end up being off mark at some level.
Right. And that's why I always tell people, and I said, I tell them I didn't start something myself as a startup, but I can see what's happening around me. And the majority of the time startup that fail because they were trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Or maybe they were bringing something too early to the market. This is why it didn't work. And to your point, Jeff, I think also having this, I would say, perseverance, to find that one is very key. Maybe it's like kind of funny, but even what I'm doing with the podcast, I said, look, I gotta try my luck. If one guy listened to me, I gotta continue.
Why not? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was enough to have one. I don't know who, because from the analytics, I can see how many people are listening, but I don't know who are listening.
Yeah.
I said, I will watch. And then if I see like, okay, people constantly coming by, that means I'm onto something. So I think startup is the same thing. So if you are onto something, people will come back, will talk to you, they will ask you, can you do this? Can you do that? I have this problem. So 100% of this point. Jeff, like really, I enjoyed the conversation. Was there anything that you wished I had asked you?
I think you hit kind of everything. Like I said, I've been spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs and helping them try to figure out how to, truly bring products to market and both from a technical and from a business perspective. And you've hit all the questions that I would have thought you'd hit.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for this feedback, Jeff.
Yeah.
And thank you for your time and being on the show with me today. And, this is the way where people can find more about you, Jeff.
Yeah. So I'm actually just starting a new company because that's what I do. And it's called My Tree Services. It's mytreeservices.com and My Tree is Buddhist for friendship. So it's all about, I started it with two friends, two of my great friends, and we're out looking for other friends to help out in the market. So we're mytreeservices.com. We're really in the business of mentoring and helping startups, medium-sized companies who kind of do what we did by leveraging, offshore resources, but also really mentoring and helping the startup entrepreneurs through the process and journey of bringing a product to market. And learning from our experience, helping them out along the way, and providing the resources to get it done.
That's good.
mytreeservices.com. Yes.
That's great, Jeff. I would make sure that this will be in the show note. And, I'm very curious to see how this will grow in the future also as well. And for the audience, guys, if you have any question, any feedback about this episode or question to Jeff, pass them to me. And if you are also interested to be a guest on the show, don't be shy. Reach out to me directly as well. And then we can do the arrangement. And I apologize for my sound today, guys. But I still wanted to do the shootings today. So thank you very much for listening or watching. And we'll meet again very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.